Alright, greetings y'all. Welcome to what is in some ways the second video of my Foundation series, which is effectively something I've started this year, and I guess I kind of finally have a name for it now, right? But this Foundation series is really about showing you where my theories, where my ideas come from, kind of how they directly relate to the game, and just taking the opportunity to talk about some influential articles, theories, ideas, concepts for those who might be interested in this topic, both in an academic sense, but also potentially in a, disability theory or game theory kind of sense. And there's a bunch of people I could delve into. I mean, there are literally dozens of these that I could do. But I figured I'd start with some kind of key concepts that I want DMs to hopefully internalize, or at least just consider, right? You don't have to agree with me. By all means, disagree. I'd love to hear it in the comments. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this video about Julian Scott's Almost Passing, a performance analysis of personal narratives of physically disabled femininity. Now, if you hear that title and go, oh my god, feminism again, ew, A, there's the door, boot yourself out of it. B, and arguably more importantly, this video isn't really here to talk about that. This video is here to talk about the concept of almost passing and really what it means for a session 0 and what it means for your game. This video is for people who don't think session 0s or communication before the game matter. Scott was concerned with women with disabilities and how our largely patriarchal society interacts with these women. Quoting her directly, the study concludes that responses to almost passing female bodies illustrate how their marginalization or acceptance is entangled in gendered cultural norms and related to their capacity to disrupt or reinforce existing power relations. To put it in plain English, women with disabilities are often put upon by men because they are A, women, and are presumed to need help because they are women, and also B, they are disabled and are presumed to need help because they are disabled, regardless of the wants or desires of the women involved. In short, their disabilities compound the pejorative treatment they receive. With her thesis out of the way, let's get to the almost passing bit, shall we? We've done our due diligence. The women in Scott's study often choose not to reveal their disabilities unless required, which is no different from many disabled people. Thus, they pass, quote-unquote, as normal, attractive women. Not the players, the women in her study. By almost passing for able-bodied, these choices repeatedly surface as others deem their bodies abnormal, even though they still find them pleasing, attractive, and overall non-disruptive to their experiences. For a colleague, romantic partner, and or the acquaintance across interactions. In other words, to be almost passing is to unintentionally masquerade as a normal. In other words, to be almost passing is to unintentionally masquerade as a quote-unquote normal person. The reveal that the subject is disabled often comes as a shock. It may be met by disbelief and, more usually, garners unwanted attention. There are some that I have met that refuse to believe I'm blind. I find this is true particularly when I interact with people online. I've had teachers do it to me in school, and I've had plenty of others say, no, you're blind, you can't be typing, or no, you're blind, you can't be texting on your phone, or no, you're blind, you can't X. I don't believe you. How are you completely blind? And the answer is I'm not completely blind, and blindness is a spectrum. And it's the same for these women. But why does any of this matter for D&D? Well, when you hold a session 0, it gives players a chance to disclose if they have any problems gaming. Maybe they can't read the dice. Maybe they didn't know they couldn't read the dice until they actually see them. Maybe they didn't know because they've never handled dice before. Maybe the chair that they're sitting in the game shop you're in doesn't give them the support they need to avoid excruciating pain. Bill Sylvie, my DM on Tuesdays, knows this quite well. He was in a god-awful chair for quite some time, and he didn't even have really, bad back problems. Not to the point of disability, but that became a problem with him and limited our game time and limited his comfort, right? Maybe their dyslexia gets in the way, and sometimes they might need help, looking up rules or reading spells because they just can't do it as quickly. All right, that's one side of the story and the one you've heard from me before. However, there's a flip side to this, one that DMs might not think about, and why the recurring meetings after a session or even before a session might come in handy for DMs, even if they have players that are disabled or don't have players that are disabled, because sometimes life changes. So what might happen is this: the disabled player will downplay their disability unless they believe it's going to be a constant issue. When their disability becomes an issue, they'll bring it up either in-game or in privately. And this could be disastrous if this happens mid-game, or if their attempts to disclose their disability in private go ignored or go unrespected. What we need to do as DMs is to be aware that sometimes disability-related issues may not come out in a session 0. We also must respect what that player needs. If they can't see the battle mat, as an example, the blind player might expect their DM to be a bit more lenient with the placement of spells or character movement. We also need to be careful not to treat the disabled player any differently unless that treatment has been requested. While showing concern or offering help might seem nice to you, it can seem demeaning, embarrassing, or even insulting to a disabled player if they've only revealed their disability in private. The game table is a safe space, and players need to be told it's a safe space. The session 0 is what sets the tone for the rest of the experience, and the session 0 informs players, particularly new players, ones that haven't done this before, that this is a safe space, that they can share their disability or if they need help. And on a personal note, I would always recommend to my players that even if you don't think your disability is a factor, it's worth just letting your players know, because these can be very personal games. Now, before we conclude, and you all can grab your torch and pitchforks and tar and feather me in the comments, I want to make one final point about what Scott brings up. During her interviews, she had an interesting experience with her subjects, and I quote, "Are similar embodiments engaged in the performance of teller and listener reciting cultural performatives familiar to each of us? Readers of this essay enter into a struggle with us, offering their own interpretations of almost passing disability and the performance of gender in ongoing efforts to create meaning through interaction." And this is the core of what I'm getting at. When a disabled DM and a disabled player engage in the game together, a similar effect occurs. So do any non-disabled players that experience this interaction as well. This video and my work are a literal response to Scott's work. We engage in performatives with other players. The players, often our friends, see our struggles as disabled and almost passing players and benefit from their experiences. Post-session discussions and pre-campaign session 0s, even if they're just 10 to 20 minutes, help disabled players communicate their needs. Now I'm going to conclude with an example. Bill, the Dungeon Delver, hi Bill, myself, and a bunch of other fine people play D&D every Tuesday-ish. And if you want to see a blind guy play AD&D and a bunch of other, probably far more talented people play AD&D, you can watch our streams over on his channel. As a player in Bill's game, I've never been asked, and therefore don't feel as open to sharing, my needs as a blind player. So what do? I handle them myself, and I speak up purely when it matters. Bill and I are friends, we get along well, but we don't have post-session meetings, nor have we ever really had a session 0. The game is truly unscripted. What you see on his channel is all there is. Period. That's it. And our D&D games are effectively then unplanned. That said, we make it work, and it demonstrates that these measures are not mandatory. You don't need a session 0, you don't need post-session discussions. However, speaking as a disabled player, I do wish more DMs would initiate these discussions. They are the first among equals at the table, they set the tone. The disabled can advocate for themselves, we always do, but sometimes it's nice not to have to start that ball rolling. Alright, y'all, thanks for showing up. Thanks for watching this video. Please remember to like, share, subscribe. Catch me over at the Dungeon Delver every Tuesday. If you haven't subscribed over on his channel, I would recommend it. He also streams other shows. Gamma World is one. He's done Call of Cthulhu. He's done a bunch of other stuff. So feel free to go and check him out as well if you haven't already. And if you come over from his channel and are new here, welcome. Feel free, stay. You can throw out my ideas if you don't like them, but I hope there's something positive you walk away with. Take it easy. See you next week.